Hi guys, good evening. Welcome in. It's good to see so many of you on here this evening. I'll give you kind of a minute or two to just kind of settle in, make sure your screen is at a comfortable level, sound, grab a glass of wine, whatever it is that you need to do tonight to make yourself comfortable for the next hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm going to get started now because I am conscious of time. So first of all, just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight for the Soundly Sleeping Toddler workshop. The workshop this evening is hosted by Pachamama and delivered by Charmaine Walters, who I'm going to hand over to in just a second. My name is Ariana. I run Pachamama. We are an online parenting hub, particularly for new parents who are transitioning into that stage of their life for the first time. And we provide support with online workshops and talks like this one. And as of Monday of this week, we actually just launched a new service that pairs parents with a maternity nurse via WhatsApp for 24/7 tech support, which is pretty great. So we do a lot around newborn care, but we also work with experts who, like Charmaine, their areas of expertise go beyond that. So tonight we are going to be focusing on the toddler stage. When you signed up to the session this evening, you were given the option to ask a question, which we did get, and the majority of those questions will be answered tonight within Charmaine's presentation. But we will leave some time at the end for Q&A. So if there's anything that you'd like Charmaine to go into in more detail, or something that we haven't covered that you would like us to address, feel free to ask the questions as she's presenting in the chat box, and I'll keep an eye on those. Or if we're up for making it feel as real as possible, feel free to unmute at the end and pose your question yourself. The most important thing, I think, for this session is that you guys get what you need out of this session. You'll see I am recording it, so if anyone has to drop off at certain points, if anyone's got a toddler that comes in halfway through out of bed and they need to get them back into bed, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to share the link with Fenny's to be shared with you afterwards for a period of time. And there's also going to be a handout shared with some sleep strategies that Charmaine will kind of take you through a few of them in the presentation, but there'll be a whole bunch more that are included. So you will have kind of notes to refer back to. I think that's enough from me. Charmaine, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you so much.
Hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Charmaine Walters, and I'm going to be facilitating tonight's workshop. Just to give you a couple of heads up on me, I'm usually very animated and fun-loving and talkative, but I woke up this morning with swollen tonsils and a fever. So I'm going to turn off my camera for the majority of the presentation, purely because I keep breaking out in a sweat every so often, and it's not cute. So I'm going to be doing that. I will, the majority of the content in today's class is going to take me about 90 minutes to get through, and then I'm going to leave about half an hour towards the end to answer any questions that you may have. But if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please post them in the chat box. Ariana will, if she feels like I haven't addressed that question in the content, she will, perhaps unmute herself and ask me. But then, like I said, at the end, we're going to have time to do a Q&A at the end so that I can answer your sleep questions and just kind of help you to sort of navigate sleep for you and your little one. So let's get started. Hold on a minute. I'm going to turn my video off. But as I said, I'm still here. I just want to hide myself profusely in front of you. Oh, I've jumped ahead way too quickly. So I work in collaboration with the lovely Ariana at Pachamama. As Ariana mentioned, we host online events, classes, workshops, courses, newsletters, podcasts. We just are here to support and empower new and first-time mums, sort of in that fourth aspect trimester of your parenting journey. But as Ariana said, we try to support beyond that as well when needs be. So that's what today's workshop is about. Today's workshop is about helping you to understand your toddler sleep so that you can preserve it. And if your little one is having difficulties, this class is going to help you to identify what the sleep difficulty is so that you can get sleep back on track as quickly as possible. So I just wanted to share this quote with you by the renowned Magda Gerber. Magda Gerber is somebody who worked who used to work in early years. She worked specifically with babies and toddlers. And she had this to say about sleep, which is really very fitting. So the saying is that sleep is not something that we can make happen for other people. Can't force anybody else to sleep. All we can do is create the right conditions at the right time and then patiently allow sleep to happen. So when you think about sleep that way, it kind of takes the pressure off of you to make sleep happen for you or your little ones. And it just reminds you that sleep is about creating the right conditions at the right time and then allowing your little one to do the rest. Because we can't make anybody sleep, unfortunately. So in today's workshop, the goal for me today, teach you in today's workshop, is one, show you the reasons why toddlers can really struggle with sleep at times. Like, toddlers are physically capable of sleeping like adults in that, you know, they have adult sleep cycles and so on and so forth. However, things that can make sleep difficult for them are very similar to the things that can make sleep difficult for us adults. However, as you can imagine, because they're toddlers and they're children, it's something that they need help and support with. So this class is about showing you the possible reasons why toddlers can really struggle with sleep at times, how you can identify those reasons, because as I'm sure you can imagine, there are a million and one reasons why little ones will struggle with sleep. And then this class is about giving you some tools and some strategies that you can choose from to help you solve any problems that may be impacting your little one's sleep for your little one. So there are things that I'm going to share with you that you can do throughout the day to help your little one with sleep, because a lot of the time it's things that are happening to them and for them during the day that can have an impact on sleep. And then there are things that you can do sort of in the run up to bedtime and overnight as well if they're struggling with sleep too. So just to introduce you to me, my name is Charmaine Walters. This is what I look like when I'm not ill and I'm not breaking out into a cold sweat. I'm Charmaine. I'm a mum as well. I have a 19-year-old daughter. I am an early years practitioner, so I work in early years, and I have done for well over 23 years. I have an NNEB qualification. As well as that, I have also worked for many, many years as a night nanny, helping and supporting new and first-time parents with their little one's sleep overnight at home. So as you can imagine, I have a lot of experience helping and supporting parents overnight, helping them to preserve sleep, helping them to recognize what makes sleep easier for little ones and what makes sleep more difficult for them. I'm also a holistic sleep coach, and I have a level 3 certificate in sleep training, and I also have a level 6 certificate, which is a degree equivalent in holistic sleep coaching, which was facilitated and taught by the wonderful and amazing Lindsay Hookway, and it's some of her strategies that I'll be sharing with you at the end of this presentation for you to use with your little one and how they sleep. So I just want you to have a think about how your toddler sleeps right now. And I want you to have a think about what sleep goal you might have for your little one. So many toddlers are still struggling with sleep. It's not abnormal. It's not anything that you've done wrong. And especially with the pandemic last year, well, us still being within the pandemic, you know, anxiety has been at an all-time high. Our emotions are heightened. And so sometimes it's been difficult, not only for us adults to sleep, but it's been challenging for our little ones to sleep as well. So I just want you to have a think about what your sleep goals for your little one might be. Everybody has different sleep goals. So it might be as simple as just being able to stay in their own bed all night long. It could be something as simple as just being able to fall asleep without you having to sit with them all night again. It could be you wanting to stop the night wakings or minimize and reduce them. Or it could be, you know, something as simple as eliminating bedtime battles. Now, these are not an exhaustive list. You might have other sleep goals of your own. You might want to move away from bed sharing or co-sleeping, or you might have a little one who is regularly waking up in the night and coming into bed with you, and you're just wondering what you can do to eliminate that and minimize that. So today's class is all about explaining to you why little ones find sleep difficult and things that you can do to help and support them so that sleep is a lot easier for them to achieve. So what does normal sleep look like for our little ones? A lot of parents don't have a real understanding of what normal sleep looks like for little ones. So I'm going to share with you some evidence and some statistics. So at 1 year of age, 50% of children are still waking up overnight. They are still waking overnight, and that 50% of those children who are still waking overnight actually need parents' help to get them back to sleep. So if this is you, if you've got a little one who's 1 to 2 years old and you're thinking, ugh, still having to help my little one get back to sleep, please know and understand this is normal. It's not that you should have sleep trained. It's not that there's something wrong with your little one. It's very, very normal to have little ones struggle to fall asleep and stay asleep overnight. At 2 years of age, a 1991 study found that 55% of the children that they were monitoring were still waking up overnight. That's quite a lot when you think about it, isn't it? 55%. So as you can imagine, over 50% of children that were studied in this study is still waking up. That's more than half. So again, it just goes to show that little ones waking is very, very normal. Extremely tiring, but very, very normal. So a more recent study of a cross-section of children in 2012 looked at a cross-section of 1,200 infants, and 1/3 of those were still waking up overnight at 15 months old. And out of those, some of those were still waking up at least once per week at 2 years of age. So again, it's not anything that you've done wrong. It's very, very normal. So this is what normal sleep, or this is what you can expect from your little one when it comes to sleep. So if you've got a little one who's aged between 1 and 2, you can expect them to sleep anything between 11 and 13 hours in total in a 24-hour period. Now, that's an average guidelines, and this statistic has been taken from the National Society of Sleep, or the British Sleep. Now, that range means that there are some children who have very low sleep needs and will only need 11 hours of sleep, or maybe even less than that in a 24-hour period. And there are some children who who have higher sleep needs and will need sort of the higher range of that. So that average there, 11 to 13 hours, is not, oh, they're going to need between 11 and 13. It just means that some kids are going to need less than that. Some children are going to need up to 13 hours of sleep. There are some children who may need more. There are some children who may need less. So if you're worried about your little one's sleep, it might be worthwhile just making a note of how much sleep they're getting in a 24-hour period. And I'm going to show you how you can do that in a little while. But sometimes a lot of parents come to me and they're like, you know, my child must be sleep deprived. They must be in a sleep debt. And when we sit down and we look about how much sleep our little ones are getting in a 24-hour period, we realize that actually there isn't a sleep debt per se. It's just perhaps that there just needs to be a little bit more organization around the timings that little ones are going to bed and falling asleep. So approximately 2 hours of that 11 to 13 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period is going to be needed at nap time. But again, this is just the average. There are some little ones who will refuse nap time. There are some little ones who will only have 1 hour, 30 minutes. There are some little ones who will have more than that. So as I mentioned before, over 50% of 1-year-olds will still be waking overnight, and 50%, and half of that 50% will still need adult help and support to get back to sleep. So if this is you, if you're a parent who's got a 1 to 2-year-old and you're still having to really help and support your little one get back to sleep, know and understand that while it's really tiring and sometimes very inconvenient, it's very, very normal, and it's not something that you have done wrong. A 2016 report that was looking at 2-year-olds, 2-year-old toddlers found that 54% of them were still waking up overnight. So that report was just done just 5 years ago. And 54% of 2-year-olds are still waking up overnight. And that those sleep challenges within this age range were often related to social and emotional challenges. That's very telling if you think about it. And if you consider what's been going on for us over the last year in terms of the pandemic on a global scale, it's been something that's sort of heightened our fears, anxieties, and emotions. And it's made things very difficult for us adults. So as you can imagine, it can also have an impact on our little one's sleep as well. It's also important to bear in mind that sleep often regresses at 18 months of age. This is something that I have found with my little ones that I care for at nursery. I run the toddler room, and there are many times when my toddlers go through phases where they first join my room where they need to nap regularly during the day, and then they go through a phase where they get to like 18, 19 months where they regularly refuse them. They regularly refuse daytime naps, or they'll fight going down to bed at bedtime. And parents think, oh, you know, it's something that I've done wrong. It's very common. It's very normal. So if you do have a little one who's around about this age group, who is finding sleep more difficult or is resisting naps, again, it's nothing you've done wrong. It is very, very normal. It is normal for little ones to resist nap times or refuse them altogether and then start napping again. So please do not panic if this is you. And also, if you are still breastfeeding your toddler, this is no judgment. A lot of people choose to breastfeed or to extend breastfeeding up to 3, 4, 5, even 6 years of age. It's important to realise and recognise that night feeds are still going to be a common occurrence if you are breastfeeding your toddlers. It is very normal and natural for them to wake up overnight wanting to feed because, as I'm sure you're aware, breastfeeding is not just about nutrition, it's about attachment and connection as well. And children, it's very normal for children to wake up in the night needing that reassurance and that attachment and that support from their parents. So what does normal sleep look like for a toddler between 2 to 3 years of age? So at this stage, children are still within the same age range of needing between 11 and 13 hours sleep in a 24-hour period, but the average for most 3-year-olds is about 12 hours in total in a 24-hour period. 11 of those hours being overnight and 1 hour of that being at nap time if toddler needs to nap. There are many 2-year-olds who still nap. There are many 2-year-olds who don't nap, refuse a nap. So if you're finding this is you and they're sleeping about 12 hours overnight and, you know, they are resisting or refusing naps, go with it. It might be that your toddler is perfectly capable of coping a whole day without needing a nap. Do bear in mind and know and understand that every toddler is different and the activity levels and the energy expenditure of each toddler is going to be different. So there are going to be some days when your toddler's going to be very active, very busy, not just physically but intellectually as well, and they're going to need a nap. And then there are probably going to be other days where they're quite not as active, quite not as busy as days prior, where they might not need a nap. So it is normal and natural for nap needs to change on a day-to-day basis. Many parents prematurely drop the day naps as well when night sleep goes awry at this age. So again, sometimes parents find that if night sleep is going awry, they think, all right, if I drop the daytime nap, nighttime sleep will improve. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. You're not going to know for sure whether or not daytime sleep is going to impact nighttime sleep unless you experiment a little bit. So sometimes it can be worthwhile not dropping a daytime nap altogether, but shaving it down by 15 minutes, half an hour, just to see if it has an impact on night sleep as well. So that is something to consider. Again, if your little one is waking up in the night between 2 to 3 years of age, it is still very common, and again, it's linked to emotions and anxiety and worry. So settling back to sleep is usually done fairly quickly if parental input is needed, because it's the emotions that are usually impacting and making sleep difficult. So I just wanted to share this because I know a lot of parents who reach out to me in frustration often feel like, my kid just doesn't seem to like sleep. What's going on? Why are they not sleeping? 9 times out of 10, I have found most toddlers, most babies, most adults, we want to be asleep at night. It's not that we want to be difficult, we want to be awake. We want to be sleeping. So if your little one is not sleeping or is finding sleep difficult, there is usually always a reason for it. We've just got to find it. Now, if you're working with babies, finding that reason can be quite challenging. However, if you're working with toddlers, I often find getting to the root cause is slightly easier. 1, because toddlers are capable of sleeping more like adults, and 2, because I know that with toddlers, they're all about their emotions. They're all about their big feelings. They have very busy, active brains, and they're very curious. And so a lot of the time, if they're not sleeping, it's because there's some sort of emotion or anxiety or worry or fear, or they're physically dysregulated and need some help and support with that. So you're probably thinking, okay, how do I figure out the cause of a sleep struggle when it comes to my toddler? So the best way that you can do that is to pay attention and to observe what's going on with our little ones. Nobody knows your toddler better than you. This is one thing that I find about our parents, is the clients that I work with. We all know our kids incredibly well. It's just that sometimes the things that they're doing, we don't always know why they're doing it. And so often I say to parents, if you can start making a note, start keeping a diary of what your little one is doing in a 24-hour period, a lot of the time what they're doing in the moment doesn't make any sense. But then when you look back over a period of days at what they've been doing, it makes it easier to figure out what's going on. So for example, If you're worried that your little one is waking up too much in the night and you keep a sleep diary over a number of days, you might look back and realize that actually your little one is getting plenty of sleep. They are getting sort of 11, 12, 13 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period. It's just that times of the day that aren't convenient for you or aren't convenient for them, and so need rejigging and reshifting and and moving around. Does that make sense? So keeping a note of what's happening, of what is happening, and when it's happening in a 24-hour period for a few days can be really, really useful to help you recognize and identify what's making sleep difficult for your little one. And initially, I would always say make a note of the time they're going to bed, make a note of the times that they're waking up. If they're at nursery during the day, get the key workers to, or your little one's nursery nurse to keep note of how long they're sleeping for and the time that they're going to sleep as well. Because sometimes the timings of when they're going to sleep can make all the difference. Sometimes we're trying to get our little ones down to nap when they're just not tired enough, or we're getting them down to nap when they're overtired and so they're wired and sleep becomes a little bit more difficult. And also as well, in terms of observing, it's also important to make a note of what's going on around your little one as well, which I'm going to get to as we go through the content in this class. Okay, so as I mentioned before, when I'm working with clients to help them figure out why their little one is struggling with sleep, I always look for a reason. There is always a reason why little ones are struggling with sleep. And learning to sleep through the night independently is a developmental milestone, much like crawling, walking, eating, talking, and so on and so forth. So when your little one is struggling with sleep and needs your help to sleep, the best way to help them to tackle a sleep issue and to help get sleep back on track is to look for the root cause. So trying to sleep train without identifying the root cause can actually make the whole process more difficult for you and more difficult for your little one. Sleep training, from my perspective, often means putting your little one to bed, leaving them to cry on their own in their room, which to me makes sleep a lot more difficult and a lot more challenged to come by, and it doesn't address the root cause. It causes more stress for everybody, and I often find that when you try to use sleep training, use cry out as a form of sleep training, especially with toddlers, it garners short-term results, if any. It's very, very stress-inducing, and if anything, it can actually backfire and make the child a lot more clingy and a lot more needy of their parents. So addressing the root problem means that sleep can be restored as quickly and easily and as stress-free as possible. So as I said, we do that by keeping a log, keeping a diary of what's going on so that we can look back over a period of days and then see if we can identify the possible reasons why little ones struggle with sleep. Now, as I mentioned before, there is a million and one possible and potential reasons why little ones struggle with sleep. But how I do it is that I divide the possible reasons why they're struggling to sleep into 4 different categories. And so I divided those 4 categories in looking at everything to do with the child and then what's going on around with the child. So the first 3 areas that I look at are what's going on for your little one physically and physiologically, what's happening around them emotionally and socially, what's going on in terms of their growth and development and their behavior. Are they reaching developmental milestones that could be having an impact on their emotions? And then outside of that, I then look at everything that's going on around the child that could be having an impact on sleep and making things difficult for them. So we look at the physical potential reasons why they might not be sleeping. Are they overtired? Are they not tired enough? Are they not expending enough energy? When it comes to their emotional and social development, are there things that can trigger sleep resistance? When I'm looking at their cognitive development, are there areas in their development, are they reaching developmental milestones that could be having an impact on their emotions and therefore making it difficult for them to sleep? Because a lot of the times, sleep regressions or sleep difficulties can often occur at the times of developmental advances. So I often find with toddlers, it's around about the time when there's language acquisition or when there's new physical skills that are being developed, that sleep can often become difficult to come by. And then, as I mentioned before, we look at everything that kind of goes on and around our toddlers as well and see if that can have an impact on them as well. Because the toddler years are not only a year when there's rapid growth and development for your toddler, but there's also a lot going on around the toddler that can make sleep difficult for them as well. Right now we're going to look at the physical or physiological sleep difficulty triggers and how we can overcome them. So dysregulated body clock, and what I mean by that is that your little one's body clock hasn't been primed to help them to feel awake at the ideal times of day, and then more sleepy for them at the end of the day. So this is where we need to work with their body clock and look at how we can prime their body clock to help them to be tired at the right time of day and help them to be awake, alert, and active and learning at the right times of day. And I'm going to share some ways that we can do that with you in a moment. Sometimes overtiredness or undertiredness can have an impact on sleep as well. Now, overtiredness is something that's often overlooked when it comes to toddlers. It's something that many parents focus on with little ones. But overtiredness is just basically when you've been awake for too long and your body releases hormones to help you to cope with being awake longer than you should have been. And those hormones usually include adrenaline and cortisol. Now, we need cortisol. We need the body to make cortisol, and we need our body to secrete cortisol during the day to keep us awake and alert. And you'll often find that our cortisol levels in our body begin to rise at about 4 o'clock in the morning and hit their peak at 9 a.m., which is usually the time of day when most people are kind of waking up or getting ready to start their working day. Or if your little one's at nursery, that's usually the time when they're just getting to nursery and they're ready to start the daily activities. And that's when they're at their alert and their highest peak of alertness, so to speak. Now, the beautiful thing about cortisol is that while we need it to help us to stay awake and alert, is that it has an accumulative effect, and it's also released by the body when we get into a state of stress. Now, the annoying thing about cortisol is that it has a cumulative effect. And so if we start to release or build or make excess amounts of it, it stays in our system and it makes getting to sleep and falling asleep very, very difficult for our little ones. And so the only way that you can help your little one to get rid of that extra cortisol, if they are staying awake longer than they should have done, if sleep pressure is building too high, cortisol gets released by their bodies and it makes getting to sleep and staying asleep more difficult. So this is why sometimes, in the evenings when normally our toddlers are wired normally when our toddlers should be getting tired and sleepy, they appear wired, and we're just thinking, they should be tired right now. What's going on? A lot of the time, that wiredness is basically a result of cortisol being released by your little one's body, because they've noticed, actually, the body is tired, but we haven't rested. So now we need to release hormones to help our bodies cope with being awake and active longer than it should do. And when cortisol is released, it kind of acts like coffee in the system. So with coffee, when you drink coffee when you're tired, what the caffeine in the coffee does is that it helps you to stay awake. It doesn't stop you from feeling tired, but it does help you to stay awake and alert. And that's what cortisol kind of does in our toddlers' bodies. It doesn't stop us from getting to sleep. It makes it much harder for us to fall asleep, and it makes it way, way harder to stay asleep. So this is why sometimes being mindful of your little one's natural body clock and their wakeful periods can be really, really useful. I often find that with toddlers, their ideal awake window, especially when they're at the younger scale, between 1 to 2 years of age, is about 5 or 6 hours. So if your little one is waking up at sort of 7 in the morning, they're probably going to need a nap or be ready for a nap about sort of 12-1. Some children will be a little bit later, some children will be a little bit earlier, but do bear that in mind. So keeping a note of when your little one gets tired can kind of help you to identify the ideal time to help them settle down for a nap, if nap time is something that's difficult for you. If overtiredness is becoming an issue for you and you're finding, they're a little bit too tired and I'm putting them down to bed a little bit late, make a note of what they're doing throughout the day. Pay attention. There are times when you might notice that your little one seems to be getting tired, and then you look away or you find something else to do or you get distracted by a household chore or whatever, and then you look back and all of a sudden your little one is wired. That wiredness is basically the cortisol release. So again, keeping note and keeping track of what your little one is doing throughout the day can kind of help you recognize when they're getting to the point of overtiredness so that you can help them relax for sleep. Also, as well, there is undertiredness that can be an issue as well. Now, undertiredness is something that a lot of parents don't consider. We always automatically assume our little ones are overtired. However, we are a nation of people who are just not active enough. We need to be getting out and expending energy, and it's the same for our toddlers. Our toddlers are very, very very busy physically and mentally, and they need the opportunity to get out and expend that energy. They need to be doing big body movements. They need to be running, jumping, climbing. They need the opportunity to be physically active more than at least twice a day during daylight hours. So I often say to parents, when I'm working with them to help them to facilitate sleep with their toddlers, is you want to get them out in the mornings, in the sunlight, exposed and outside in the natural daylight, because that natural broad spectrum daylight is what encourages that cortisol release to happen during the day. And you also want to get them running, jumping, climbing, and exerting and expending that big body energy. As I mentioned, we're not an active nation. Globally, we are very, very lazy. We're not active enough. So, you know, be mindful of the fact that if you want your toddler or your little ones to sleep well, we need to get them expending energy. They need to be running, jumping, climbing, balancing, crawling, hopping, anything that can get them to use their large gross motor skills is going to help and support them in sleep. Poor sleep hygiene. Now, sleep hygiene is not necessarily about how clean your bed sheets are. These are the things that you do in the run-up to bedtime that help your little one, your toddler, know and understand that sleep is coming physically. So this is quite simply your bedtime routine. Now, I mentioned poor sleep hygiene purely because many times when I'm working with my one-to-one clients and we start talking about the bedtime routine, the first thing clients say to me is, oh, yeah, we have a bedtime routine, we do it. And then I say, okay, what's included in your bedtime routine and are you doing it every night? And then I get feedback like, oh, well, we don't do it every night. We only do it every other night. Or we don't do it the night when we go to nursery. Or sometimes we include bath or sometimes we don't. That's really, really poor sleep hygiene. The beautiful thing about sleep hygiene and bedtime routine is that it's a great way of not only filling up your little one's love tank right before they go to bed, but it's a great way of helping your little one to wind down physically, mentally ready for sleep. So making sure that you have a good bedtime routine in place is really useful, but doing it every single day in the same order at roughly the same time. It doesn't have to be the same time, but at roughly at the same time every day with the same events as part of it and conducted in the same order. So a bedtime routine can be dead simple. It can be something as simple as a bath, simple massage, a story, a milk drink, and off to bed. It can literally be as simple as that, but you do need to be doing it every single day in that same order. Bedtime routines are very much dose dependent, and a lot of parents underestimate just how useful having a bedtime routine that's regular and consistent and done daily can be. So please do not overlook the importance of poor sleep hygiene, and I'm going to explain to you why sleep hygiene is good for little ones, not just physically, but mentally and cognitively as well later. Also, diet and hunger as well. Many toddlers are extremely fussy eaters. I know they go through phases where they're very, very fussy. There's certain foods they don't want to eat. There's certain foods they want to eat all the time. Or they're waking up overnight and wanting to have milk drinks throughout the night, which is normal and natural. However, again, it can be very, very inconvenient. And it can be quite annoying as well if you do have a fussy toddler who isn't eating. So I'm going to share with you some things in a moment that you can do to help them sleep well in terms of food. And then, of course, illness, pain and discomfort, and that can impact their sleep as well. So here are a few quick fixes that I wanted to share with you that make sleep easier for your toddlers that you can do throughout the day. So I call these the quick fixes because these are things that you can kind of do without giving it any second thought and without really having to do anything in addition to what you're already doing now. So if you remember when in the last slide, I was talking about broad spectrum daylight and cortisol and how the body clock releases hormones at different times of day to help us to be aware of when we need to be awake and alert and active and learning and taking in information. And then there's also times of the day as the evening approaches when hormones get released by the body to let us know that nighttime is coming and it's time to wind down, minimize physical activity and start resting. So during the day, the cortisol that aids and supports the hormone that supports us aids us in being awake and alert and active is cortisol. And it's something that we need in our bodies. But as I mentioned before, if we sleep pressure builds too much and our little ones become overtired, cortisol can be released in excess. And sometimes the best way to get rid of that is to allow our children to be active. So one, you want to expose your little ones to broad spectrum daylight so that they are getting the cortisol that they should be, that their body should be making and secreting during the day. We want the body to secrete that. So you want to get them outside at least twice a day. I often say do it once in the morning and once in the afternoon. If the weather is awful and you can't get them outside, exposing them to broad spectrum daylight through the curtains or through the windows is perfectly normal and natural. However, it is better to get them outside and expose them to the broad spectrum daylight that way. And again, it's a great opportunity and time for you to help them to get active and to, you know, move their bodies around. So if you are living somewhere where you don't have access to a garden or a playground, you can wear your little ones out as simply as allowing them to get out and walk in their buggies, sort of more than perhaps they would. So I know with me, when I had my little one, I had my car, and sort of in between using the car, I would put her in the buggy to go everywhere. But then I was finding as time was going on, because she was expending less and less energy, because I was constantly either driving her around or pushing her around the buggy, sleep wasn't happening quite so well. So I was finding that if I allowed her more times or more opportunities to get out and walk, I would do things like run errands and go to the shops, and instead of putting her in the buggy, I would allow her to walk behind the buggy, and we put the shopping in the buggy, and she would push it. It does mean that your daily errands and the things that you're doing as you're going out and about throughout the day are probably going to take a little bit longer, but it means that your little one, A, has the opportunity to explore. It means they have the opportunity to expend energy. Remember, we want them to expend energy because that helps them to feel physically tired, ready for naps and evening sleep. And it means that they can explore the world around them. They can see things from a different perspective. With toddlers, they're doing the majority of their learning and developing in the first 2 years of life. They are never going to learn at the rate and the intensity that they do in the first 4 years of their life, that they do at the rest of their life. So give them the opportunity to explore, let them look around, point things out around them, because wearing them out physically as well as intellectually are two great ways to help and support them in making sleep happen. Another thing that we can do is in the run up to the bedtime routine, and as the evening approaches, I know it's quite difficult to do in the summer at this time of year, but you know, there is no harm in dimming the lights and allowing that the dimming daylight of the day to you know, be exposed to our little ones. We are very, very quick to turn on artificial light. However, the diminishing daylight is a great way of helping your little one's body clock and our body clock to recognize that nighttime is coming. And that when nighttime is coming, and when we're exposed to dimmed light, that encourages our body to make and secrete melatonin. Now, melatonin is the sleepy hormone. And again, it's something our body makes when we're exposed to darkness. Now, the great thing about melatonin is that it doesn't make us sleep, but it contributes in helping us to feel sleepy. So if you're already tired, you've already had a busy day, you've done your bedtime routine and you've helped your little one wind down and you know they're tired, and you're exposing them to dimmed light as well, that dimmed light is going to encourage the secretion of melatonin, and that hormone is really, really helpful for helping your little one to feel sleepy in the evening. On top of that, throughout the night, when you're sleeping in complete darkness, which is something I know many toddler parents don't do with their toddlers because they're concerned that they're going to wake up, so they'll make sure they have night lights and so on and so forth. Sleeping in complete darkness, in pitch black dark at night, encourages and maintains that melatonin production to happen during the night, and that enhances the quality and the depth of your sleep. So I know many, many toddler parents are very concerned or worried that their little ones are going to wake up in the night and be scared or frightened if they don't have a night light. But having a nice dark room in your toddler's room is really going to help enhance the quality of sleep that they're having. So, you know, don't be afraid to turn off the lights when they're asleep and when they're happy. As I said, if they're mentioning to you or they're signaling to you at night and that they need you, there is no harm in turning a night light on or investing in a red light bulb. Red light bulbs are something that I'm massively a fan of, because red light bulbs are really good in that they are a nice light that you can use at light, but they are, what's the word I'm looking for? They are not melatonin blockers. So you'll often find the light bulbs that we use at home have got, even if they're white, they have a blue light frequency behind it. It's also the same blue light frequency that is behind TV screens, behind mobile phone screens, and behind laptop and computer screens as well. And these lights have a blue light frequency, which is a melatonin blocker. I don't know if you've ever noticed this at home. You might be in bed at home sleeping, not in bed at home sleeping, but you might be in bed getting ready to go off to sleep, feeling quite sleepy, and then you pick up your phone, check out Facebook or Instagram, and before you know it, an hour has passed and you're no longer feeling tired anymore. And the reason being for that is because the blue light frequency behind your phone's light has basically gotten rid of the melatonin that your brain was making. So you want to preserve that melatonin secretion and production by either dimming the lights in your house or using red light bulbs. And red light bulbs are really, really easy to use. I've got them all over my house. I'm a massive fan of smart light bulbs, and I have all the light bulbs in my house are color changeable and are managed via app, purely because I know and understand just how important it is to preserve my sleep after years of working nights. So again, if this is something that you're worried or concerned about for your toddler, by all means invest in a red light bulb, a light bulb that you can turn white if you need to, that you can dim. And it's a great way of being able to go in, support your toddler at night if they need you, and without waking them up completely or sort of disturbing that melatonin production, if that makes sense. Also, as well, you want to make sure that you time your naps throughout the day very well. So with toddlers, they only really need one nap during the day, I find. By the time they get to sort of 15, 18 months, they're not needing 2 or 3 naps in the day. They're only needing one nap. And the best time for you to time that nap is usually slap bang in the middle of the day. So the middle of the day is going to vary from child to child. If your little one is waking up at 6 a.m. and going to bed, I don't know, at sort of 7:30 p.m. The ideal nap time for them might be about 12:31. It might be slightly earlier. It might be slightly later. You're not going to know until you experiment and play around with it for a little bit. And again, this is why making notes and keeping track of when your little one is sleeping and when your little one is waking up can be really useful. Again, also as well, talking to your little one's key worker at nursery and finding out the times that they fall asleep habitually and the times that they wake up can be really useful as well. So, for example, with me and my toddlers, I have 9 toddlers in my classroom, and they all sleep roughly between 11:30 and 2 o'clock. However, some of my toddlers need to go to sleep bang on 11:30. Some of them don't fall asleep till 1 o'clock, and that's just based on their own unique individual needs. And these are all toddlers that are roughly the same age, but every toddler is different. Every toddler's energy expenditure is different for that day. Every toddler's sort of scope of learning for that day is going to be different as well. And that's the things that make sleep difficult or more easy for our little ones. So eating meals and taking naps at regular times every day is another great way that you can help set your body clock. Now, this is a really good one to think of, especially if you think about when we go on holiday and how we counteract jet lag. If you think about it, when we go on holiday, we often find that the best way to get onto local time is to start doing things when they're doing things at local time. So, for example, if we're here and we decide to go on holiday to Jamaica, the best way to transfer the body from the UK time zone to the Jamaican time zone is to expose yourself to their broad spectrum daylight when it's daylight for them. It can be quite tempting when you're on holiday to go to sleep at your home time. However, if you're exposing your body to broad spectrum daylight at local time, you're helping your body clock to adjust and to shift to the daylight hours of where you already are. And that makes it a lot easier, and it minimizes the feelings of jet lag. Also, as well, eating meals at local times as well is a great way of helping your body clock to recognize we're in a different time zone, time to shift, because we habitually get into the habit of eating breakfast, eating lunch, eating dinner at roughly the same times of day when we're at home. So if you can do that on holiday in your local time as well, that's how you help your body or your little one's body to adjust to the local time where you're at. And it's really important that we do that at home as well. So pay attention to when your little one is eating meals. Sometimes we think our little ones are eating meals at regular times during the day, and we're not. So sometimes it can be really useful to pay attention to that. Use a bedtime routine to help your little one relax and to fill up your child's love tank. Now, it's really, really important that you understand that with your toddlers, while they are physically able to sleep like adults, it's their emotions, their feelings, their cognitive development, and all the stuff that's going on with their brain that can make falling asleep and staying asleep difficult. And they often very much need that last bit of love and affection and quality time with their parents right before they go to sleep, especially if your little one is at that age where they're suffering from separation anxiety. They often need that last minute of that last time of connection between the two of you to help them feel relaxed and calm enough to fall asleep. So being very repetitive and consistent with your bedtime routine is a great way to help your little one wind down, not only physically, but intellectually ready for sleep. And also as well, including bath time as part of your bedtime routine can be really useful, because studies have found that your body temperature needs to drop significantly for sleep to happen. So this is why it's really hard for us to get to sleep in the summer, because it's so hot. Sometimes a great way to facilitate that body temperature drop is, a nice cool bath or a cool shower. So again, this is a great way of helping your little one's body to recognize that sleep is coming and to facilitate that body temperature drop to encourage sleep. And again, maintain your good sleep hygiene habits. Be repetitive and consistent with your bedtime routine. Do it in the same steps, in the same order every single day. And not just Monday through Friday. You need to be doing it at the weekends as well. Many parents think and feel that with their toddlers, at the weekends we can let them stay up a little bit later. They'll sleep in. Sometimes that actually backfired. It's really, really important for you to maintain a bedtime routine Monday through Friday, as well as Saturday and Sunday. Even if you're pushing the bedtime routine back like a little bit by half an hour or so, still do your bedtime routine. As I said, it's a great way of physically and intellectually helping your little one's body to wind down, ready for sleep.
Charmaine, I think we might have lost your audio a little bit. It might just be me. Can anyone else hear Charmaine?
No, I can't hear anything. Okay. Just you.
Can't hear anything.
Okay. Same here.
Don't worry, let me just send her a text.
Can I be heard? Awesome. Sorry about that. So where did the sound cut out? Did it cut out on this slide or the previous one?
This slide here.
Okay. So as I was saying, regular milk drinks overnight is something that many toddler parents worry about, because toddlers can be quite fussy little eaters. And so many parents think, let me give them a milk drink overnight. They might genuinely be hungry. But then sometimes what happens is that by giving your little one regular milk drinks overnight, it actually sets the body clock to wake them up for hunger. So what you want to do is, if this is something that you're worried about, you want to gently reduce the night intake of milk over a period of nights. So say, for example, if they're having 200 mils one night, give them 180 the next night, 160 the following night, and start to up their daily intake of milk during the day, just so that you can minimize the chances of your little one waking up overnight for hunger. It is something that does happen with this one. And if you can take into consideration that sometimes with them being fussy eaters, they might genuinely be hungry overnight. Sometimes it can be worth giving them a little snack in the run up to bedtime as well. That can help too. Something else that parents often overlook as well is look out for E numbers and observe your little one's reactions to food and to sugars in food. Now, there are a lot of foods that are aimed at and marketed at toddlers that contain a lot of E numbers and high levels of sugar. And many, many toddlers are very, very sensitive to E numbers, and it can actually make them quite hyperactive. The sugar can make them quite hyperactive as well. And this in turn can actually lead to resistant or refusal with getting to sleep. So again, this is why I think it's really important for some parents to just keep a note of what their little ones are eating just throughout the day, and noticing sort of patterns in behavior. As I said, sometimes things that we're looking at in the moment don't make any sense. And then when we look back over a period of days at the things we've made note of, we realise actually they're getting really, really hyper at this time of day. Why is that happening? And then you realise, oh, it's because they've had a snack, that snack's full of E numbers. So as I said, don't underestimate how useful keeping a note over a period of days of what your little one is doing, because it can really help you to identify some of the things that are triggering sleep resistance in them. Also, food intolerances as well, like allergies, food intolerances, to salicylates, nuts, dairy, gluten, weak eggs. There are many children who have mild intolerances and allergies. And sometimes they're things that we're not even necessarily aware of. So again, keeping a diary or making note of the things that our children are having, eating, doing can help us to identify at a later date if this is something that we need to be concerned about. So again, keeping a diary can be super useful to help you become aware of things that you may not have noticed before. And also as well, help your little one to manage chronic health conditions as well and help them to feel comfortable, because these things can often impact sleep too. And prepare for your toddler to have phases of fussy eating. It is very, very normal. It is quite common for your toddler to go through phases where they just don't want to eat much. And then you'll get to the end of the day and just think, oh my God, they've barely eaten. Toddlers will make up for it. I have yet to see a toddler starve themselves to death. There will always be something that they like to eat. So with that in mind, this has come up a long way. I just wanted to share with you some things that can make sleep easier for your toddler or can make it more difficult. Now, these are things that you can include in part of their daily diet. These are foods that you can give your little ones in the run up to bedtime, but there are also a list of things that you can be mindful of that can actually make sleep more difficult. So let's focus on the foods that make children more soporific. So things like turkey. Turkey, I believe, has tryptophan in it, and there's another hormone in it that I can't remember the name of now that it makes turkey a really, really good food for aiding and supporting sleep. Also, it's a protein-rich, slow release of energy, and that's a great way of helping and supporting little ones to keep their tummy full in the run-up to bedtime. Spinach is another great one. Bananas is a really, really good one. I know there are some toddlers who do not like bananas, but bananas contain tryptophan. And tryptophan is the melatonin precursor. So tryptophan basically kind of does the same things that melatonin does. It aids in the feelings of, it helps you to feel relaxed, calm, and very, very sleepy. So if you have a toddler who in the run up to bedtime seems very, very wired or full of energy, giving them a light snack of bananas with a little bit of cherry juice can be really useful. Cherries and cherry juice actually contain melatonin. Tart cherry juice actually contains very, very high levels of melatonin. So that's another great way that you can help your toddler to feel relaxed and to aid the sleep process. Jasmine rice is a complex carbohydrate, and other complex carbohydrates that are really good at slow release of energy are a great way of helping your little ones to stay full and feel fuller for longer and aid and support sleep. So that's things like quinoa, buckwheat, barley. Those are great ways to help your little ones feel fuller for longer. Sweet potato and papaya are very good ways of helping your little ones to feel sleepy. And kiwi. Kiwi contains serotonin and I believe tryptophan as well. Kiwi is a really good way of helping little ones to feel sleepy. So if you've got a little one who is very, very wired, seems quite hyper, a great way to kind of help them to calm down and relax in the run up to bedtime would be to give them a snack with bananas, cherries, and kiwis. I would do that as a dessert after dinner. So something that can kind of help them to feel relaxed and chilled. I would give them that as a snack, give them sort of 10 or 15 minutes to do a nice, quiet, chilled out activity, and then maybe start the bedtime routine. It all helps to contribute to helping a little one to feel relaxed and ready for sleep, because sleep is something that can't happen in a stressed state. Now, foods that can inhibit and make sleep way more difficult for little ones are things like high-fat fried foods. These foods are not good for us. Our body has to work way, way too hard to break them down, and it just makes sleep and getting to sleep a lot more difficult. Chocolate has high levels of caffeine in it, has high levels of sugar in it, and while it might make us and the parents feel really relaxed and chilled, it can actually have the opposite effect on our little ones and make them a little bit wired. Tomatoes can have that impact on little ones. And again, these foods, I'm not saying you shouldn't give them to your little ones. I'm saying be mindful of the times of the day that you're giving them these foods. So this is not about cutting things out of their diet. It's more about being mindful of what you're giving them and when you're giving it to them. So for example, if your little one has a great love of tomatoes, there's no reason why they can't have tomatoes. Maybe just don't give it to them sort of like in the run up to dinner any evening, or maybe give it to them as a morning snack, or let them have it at breakfast. Does that make sense? Aubergine is something else that can actually make you feel quite wired. Refined carbohydrates and high sugar foods, so things like white bread, white pasta, white rice, sweet breakfast cereals. They're all things that taste really yummy and delicious, but they're very, very high in sugar content. And sugar content, foods that are high in sugar are not your friends when it comes to sleep. Our body spends a lot of the time breaking them down. Our body has to work way too hard to break them down. And when our body's working hard to break down these high fat and high sugar foods, it just makes sleep way more difficult for us. And also things like spicy foods that are way too high in protein that make the digestion slow, and dried fruit. Things like that again, have high sugar content, can actually make it really, really difficult for our little ones to get to sleep. But I'm very mindful of the fact that I've still got loads more slides to get through. Let me just double check how we're doing time-wise. Okie dokie. Right, health and illness. I'm going to try and not whiz through it too quickly, but just kind of move more quickly through this, because I'm mindful of the fact that I've got a lot more slides to get through. So as you can imagine, pain and illness is something that's going to disrupt and make sleep very, very difficult for little ones. Sleep is difficult for us when we're ill. So it's all about keeping them comfortable and helping them to feel secure, because again, when our little ones are ill, it's going to make them feel not well physically, but it's also going to heighten their emotions. They're going to become much more clingy of us. You'll probably find that your little one will become a lot more sleepy when they're ill, but sleepy at times that are less convenient to us. So again, it's all about helping them to feel comfortable and relaxed. Teething is something that can make sleep really, really difficult for toddlers, purely because the teeth that they're cutting at the back, like the first molars, the second molars, and the canine teeth, they're coming through at quite a late stage in toddlerhood. So as you can see from this chart, the canine teeth, the first molar teeth and the second molar teeth, those are the most painful teeth to cut through. And they're coming through sort of between 16 months and 33 months. So between sort of 1.5 and 3 years is when those teeth are going to come through. And as you can imagine, having those teeth cutting through can be extremely painful. It can make eating difficult, and it can actually make sleep difficult for them as well. So this is something that you're concerned with. You know, it's all about helping them to manage their pain. There is no harm in seeking support from your GP and finding out if you can give them Calpol or what's the other one? Calprofen, which I actually prefer for teething. I find Calprofen tends to work better for teething than Calpol. However, you need to speak to your GP about that. I am not a medical expert, so I am not in a position to advise you. I just find that personally for me, Calprofen works a little bit better because it's anti-inflammatory, and that's usually what's going on with the gums. The gums are swelling, and those, you know, those teeth are coming through, and it can be really, really painful. And as I said, most toddlers want to be sleeping. They don't want to be awake in the middle of the night. They just want to be comfortable, and they want to be able to get to sleep. So this is something to be mindful of. Now, as I was saying before, when I was talking to you about keeping a diary or keeping a log of what's going on over the next couple of days, what's going on over a few days, you want to go back over what you've looked at and ask yourself questions. So if you're finding that your little one is struggling with sleep, go back over your diary and ask yourself, like, is my toddler getting enough sleep in the 24-hour period? How much sleep are they getting overnight? How much sleep are they getting in nap time? Add that together. Are they getting enough sleep? Is there a sleep debt? A lot of the time there isn't, or it's a case of that they are getting the sleep that they need. It's just happening at times which make it more, at times that are not convenient for you. So they might be going to bed too early, or waking up too early, or they might be napping too late. So have a look at those things. And again, you're not going to know what works until you play around with it and do a little bit of trial and error. How much time do they spend napping in the day? So you might find, for example, that your little one is getting 13 hours of sleep in a total 24-hour day, but 4 hours of that is in daytime sleep, and that's having an impact on nighttime sleep. So again, it's all about kind of looking at when they're getting the sleep. Is it at times that's inconvenient? Are they napping too much in the day? Are they not getting enough sleep, or are they sleeping too much at night? Are they overtired? Are they undertired? Are they hyperactive? If they're hyperactive, what's causing the hyperactivity? If they're undertired, why are they undertired? They're not getting enough physical activity during the day. Are they not expending enough energy? Are they overtired? So it could be where you're going out and you're doing lots of activity with them. They're doing all that big body movement. They're getting the opportunity to run, jump, and climb and do all of that stuff. But perhaps they just haven't had the opportunity to nap at the right time for them. So again, these are just things to consider. A lot of the time, we are very aware, or we know what it is that's causing the sleep difficulty, but because we're not conscious of it, because we're not paying attention to it, we don't realize that that's what the issue actually is. So keeping a log and then asking yourself these questions when you look at the log can really help you to figure out what it is that you could be doing that's making sleep more difficult, and tweak things. So is your bedtime or your nap time or your daily routine consistent? Are there any underlying health concerns? Those are just things to ask yourself. And also, is your toddler in a day nursery? If your toddler is regularly attending day nursery, you will often find, or studies have found, that little ones who attend day nursery compared to those who don't have much higher cortisol levels in their system in the evening and in the run up to bedtime than those who don't. If this is you, if you're finding that you're getting your little one home from nursery, it's sort of 7:30, 8 o'clock, they're wired. What you need to do with that little one is spend a little bit more time helping them to wind down and get rid of that cortisol, and then do the bedtime routine. So what I often recommend to parents with a little one who are in day nursery, have a slightly later bedtime. So a lot of parents are picking up their kids from nursery sort of like 5:36, and they're getting home and they're putting them to bed at 6:37 and finding that they're struggling to fall asleep, or they're having much more night waking, or they're waking up really early. Sometimes the best thing to do is to push that bedtime back to slightly later, to maybe 8 o'clock, and giving your little one some time to do some big body movements. So in the evenings, I find the great thing to do with your toddler is like running around the garden, jumping on the climbing frame, running up and down the stairs, jumping on the bed, doing a little bit of rough play with dad, even if it's just like 15, 20 minutes, giving them the opportunity to get rid of that cortisol, get rid of that extra energy. You need to use it up by lots of big body movements. As I said, running up and down the stairs, jumping on the bed, jumping on the trampoline, climbing. You could do games like where the floor is lava. You could create an obstacle course in your living room. Just do things that gives your little one, your toddler, the opportunity to expend that energy and then start doing their bedtime routine. So for me, I would say like come in, maybe have dinner, do a little bit of play, and it does literally just need to be like 15, 20 minutes, half an hour max of that big body play, and then you start to wind them down. You start to help them to wind down. I would also encourage you to incorporate some simple massage in your bedtime routine as well. Studies have found that parents who include bath and massage in their bedtime routine have found that they have children that fall asleep faster, children that have less night wakings, and children who have parents who are in a better mood. And there has been a link between maternal mood and child sleep. So again, including massage, simple massage as part of the bedtime routine. And it can be as simple as just moisturizing cream or lotion into your little one's skin, very slow, deliberate strokes, right after bath time to replace that moisture. Can be a great way to help calm and wind them down ready for sleep. And also as well, ask yourself, has your toddler recently had sugar, numbers, are they eating regular balanced meals? Right, so now we're going to focus on the emotional sleep triggers. Now it's really important and that parents of toddlers know and understand that when it comes to our toddlers, what's minor to us and what's no big deal to us is a huge deal to our toddlers. Toddlers bridge the world of being like a big boy or a big girl physically, but emotionally they're still growing and developing. And because they've got this physical ability to venture away from their parents and explore and do things for themselves, they feel quite grown up, but yet there are still going to be times when they need help and support to manage their feelings and emotions. Their feelings and emotions can feel quite big and overwhelming. And as they're learning and they're growing and they're developing and understanding the world around them, the way they see the world around them will change, and the way they feel about what they see will change as well. And our toddlers will need help to manage their feelings. Evidence has shown us that toddlers who struggle with sleep at around 2 years of age usually do so because they're struggling with some sort of emotional need that hasn't been met. So do bear this in mind. If your little one is struggling with sleep overnight, are they waking up because they're worried? Are they fearful? Are they fretting about something? And it might be something super minor to us. It could be something dumb, like, you know, they're upset because their friend had the pink plate today when they wanted it. Again, to us, the pink plate over a blue plate seems really, really minor and insignificant, but to a toddler, that's a big deal. It's something that can really bother them. So it can be important and useful and mindful to put yourself in your toddler's shoes and help and try and understand how they're seeing the world from their point of view. What's minor to us is a big deal to them. So things like meltdowns or difficulty managing emotions and separation anxiety heightening from time to time, and expansion of schemas, which is basically how your child sees the world around them and how that expands on a day-to-day basis, is going to have an impact on their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And that in turn is going to have an impact on how easy or how hard it is that they find it to get to sleep. Sleep is not something that can happen for us or little ones in a stressed state. If your little one is stressed, anxious, or worried about something, falling asleep and staying asleep is going to be really challenging and difficult for them. So it's our job as their parents to kind of help them to feel relaxed, help them to deal with, understand, and manage their emotions so that they can understand their sleep and find getting to sleep that much more easier. So I find that using emotion coaching with toddlers, and this is something that you can do during the day, is a really great way of helping them to understand and manage their feelings, because managing feelings and behavior can be confusing for parents, especially at nap times and bedtimes, because we're thinking, you're tired, just go to sleep. Whereas for our children, it's a thing where as much as they're tired and sleep is something that they need, sleep means being separate from us. And whether your little one is dealing with separation anxiety or not, being separate from us, their primary caregiver, can be quite distressing for them. It can be something that they don't necessarily want to do. You may as well just say that our little ones have FOMO. The thought of going to sleep and the thought of missing out on stuff, you know, why would you want to do that? There's so much to explore, there's so much fun to see, there's so much things to do. So this is why using emotion coaching can be really, really helpful in supporting your little one in understanding their thoughts and feelings, not only throughout the day, but in the run up to bedtime. Because a toddler who understands what it is that they're feeling can calm down and relax much more quickly than a toddler who can't. So using emotion coaching throughout the day will help your toddler to learn and understand and manage their big feelings. So it's for us to help them to manage them initially, but initially emotion coaching is about helping them to understand that emotions are normal, whether they're positive or negative. It helps them to understand what those emotions are, and it helps them to understand and know that they can calm down from them. So as I said, emotions and feelings can feel quite big for a toddler. They can feel quite big for us. I mean, I don't know about you. When I get upset or I get stressed or if I'm panicking about something, I often need to co-regulate or speak to somebody else, not to help me to understand my feelings, but to just to kind of help me co-regulate and calm down. And our toddlers are just like that, and then some. They need us to help them to understand their feelings, and then they need us to show them how they can calm down from them. And we do that by using emotion coaching. So again, it's about helping them to understand that these feelings and emotions that they're having are normal. It helps them to label those feelings, and it helps them to understand that they can calm down from them. So using naughty steps and timeouts to prevent or minimize unwanted behavior, it can be useful, but however, you don't want to teach your toddler that if they behave in a way that we don't like, that we're going to separate them from us. We don't want to punish them for feeling their feelings. We want them to understand their feelings, and we want them to know you can calm down from them. You know, these feelings are okay. It's normal to feel what you're feeling. You can calm down from them. And we can do that with some gentle emotion coaching. What you will find is when you get really good at emotion coaching with your little ones, they understand their thoughts and their feelings so much better. They calm down from them quicker, and they can actually help other people, other children as well. So say, for example, your little one is worried or scared, you can say to them, I know that's really frightening feeling for you. Do you feel scared? That feels really scary, doesn't it? So you're empathizing with them and saying, I get how you feel. I understand how you're feeling. And then you're labeling it to them. You're saying you feel really scared. You feel fearful, don't you? That's okay. Again, it's not about stopping them from feeling what they're feeling. We can't prevent our little ones from feeling what they feel. We can help them to understand it, and we can help them to calm down from it. So what you need to do is empathize. Oh, you feel really scared. Let me help you with that. Come here and I will cover you. And what you're feeling is scared. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to worry. Support them and comfort them through it. And then offer them an alternative. So, for example, if they are feeling scared, you might say to them, what can we do to alleviate that fear? Should mummy stay with you until you feel calm and relaxed? That's basically all it is. Emotional coaching sounds something really, really complicated, but it's really not. It's just empathizing, labeling the feelings for your little one, supporting them and comforting them through it, and then giving them an alternative if there is the option for it. And by getting into the habit of doing this regularly throughout the day, you help your little one to understand their feelings so much more better. So that by the time bedtime comes, if they are feeling anxious or worried, or they're fretting about being separated from you, they can tell you that. They can communicate that to you, and you can communicate it back to them, and you can do what you need to do to help and support them in that moment. But as I said, I've taken a lot of these slides out because I'm mindful of the fact that we're running out of time. We've literally only got half an hour left. So I'm going to try and whiz through the remaining slides. How many have I got left? Oh, a fair few. So what I will do is, instead of going through these strategies, I will allow Ariana to email them over to you when you need them. And then what I'll do is I'll go through the rest of the content in here, and then I'll cut to Q&A. And then if some of the Q&A means that we can go through some of the strategies that you might use, and let's do that. So again, if you've been keeping a diary or a log of what's been going on with your little one over the last couple of days, it might be useful to go back and look at what you've recorded and ask yourself some of these questions. So does your little one sleep well in your bed but struggle on their own? This is a really telling thing. If you find that if you bring your toddler into bed with you, that they sleep like a log, but the second you put them in their own room, they're regularly waking or find it difficult, this can be a very, very big indicator that they're feeling insecure about something, or that it's emotions that's making sleep difficult for them. This is something that I often say to many parents and many of my toddler clients. I say to them, like, if you slept in your bed with your little one, what would happen? And if they come back to me and say they slept like a log, I'm like, okay, well, we need to build up their confidence. We need to help them to feel secure when they're away from you. And there are many ways that we can do that. Also, have there been lots of changes that have gone around the home environment? So, for example, you might have headed back to work, or you might have started day nursery, or you might be moving house. As I mentioned before, there's lots of change that goes on for our toddler because they're learning and developing at a massive rate. But it's also a time when externally there's a lot going on for them as well. That's usually the time when mom's returning to work, or the time when a sibling arrives as well. And these changes can have an impact on our little one's thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So is your little one having more frequent meltdowns and tantrums? So a meltdown or a tantrum is literally your little one's inability to deal with a feeling or a thought that's just too big for them. But it could also be an indicator of the fact that they're tired as well. So make a note, when are these tantrums happening? Are they happening at specific times of the day? Because you might look back and realize that tantrums are happening every day at 4 o'clock, for example. That might be an indicator that your child is getting very tired at that point, at that time of the day, and might need a rest, or might need you to help and support them at that time of day. When they're perhaps getting to the end of their week, they're getting more tired, they perhaps might not need a nap, but that's the time of day when they're perhaps getting to the point where they're, really quite tired and might need a rest period. The toddler years is also years when your toddler's imagination is growing and developing. This might be when they're starting to have nightmares, or their imagination is growing and developing, and they're worrying about being left in the dark, or things that they're worrying about or dreaming about. So again, is this something that your toddler has mentioned to you during the day? Is your toddler mentioned in the run-up to bedtime that they're worried or fearful? Also, are you worried or fearful about something? Our toddlers are very, very in tune with us. They're primary caregivers. They know when there's something up with us. They know when they know when something's bothering us. They might not necessarily know what it is, but if they know that something's up with mummy or daddy, they will do things to keep you close. So again, if you're stressed or you've got things going on for yourself, or it's coming up to bedtime and you're just thinking, I'm just tired, I want them to go to sleep, our little ones pick up on that. They're very aware and they're very intuitive. And so sometimes this is why we often, in the baby sleep world, we'll often say to clients, self-care is important. Taking care of you and making sure that you're okay is important too, because if you're not okay, if you're not quite right, your toddler picks up on it, your toddler feels it, and the way that they keep us close is they act up, they misbehave, and they do things to keep us close by. So if your little one is picking up on a thought or a feeling within you that you're worried about, you're concerned about, they're going to do things to act up and keep you close by. So taking care of yourself is a great way of helping you to take care of your little one, if that makes sense. And is your toddler or your clinger going through a phase where they're just being clingy and only wanting you? Because separation anxiety is not something that just impacts babies, it impacts our toddlers. And I actually find it impacts our toddlers a lot more than our babies. So I find that separation anxiety can start to heighten around about 8-9 months of age, but it comes back at around 12 months of age, again at 18 months of age, then again at 2, then again at 2.5, then again at 3, then again at 3.5. It comes and goes. And unfortunately for us, separation anxiety can often make sleep difficult for your little ones because, again, being asleep means being separated from you. And the difference between separation anxiety and taking them to nursery as opposed to putting them to sleep is that, when you're taking them to nursery or taking them to a childminder, you're physically handing them into the care of somebody else. However, when it comes to going to sleep, your little one is entering into the realm of the unknown. You're not physically giving them into the arms of someone. They're in their beds where they're comfortable, but they're entering, a dream state, which is, essentially the land of the unknown. And if your little one has got a very vivid imagination, or if they have got worries or fears, they might be concerned that they're going to dream about the very thing that's worrying or scaring them. So this is why having your bedtime routine in place and sort of filling up your little one's love tank in the run up to bedtime is very, very useful for helping them to feel calm and relaxed. As I said before, if your little one is stressed, getting to sleep is going to be difficult for them. The best way to help them to feel calm and relaxed is to physically give them your time and your attention and relieve their fears, help them to understand their emotions, And it's also important to remember that's what's minor to us grown-ups is a big deal to them. So do bear that in mind. And also as well, if your toddler approaching a developmental milestone, so there are times in your toddler's life when the acquisition of new skills, like language development, physical development, any new skills that your little one is learning and developing often coincides with a difficulty in sleeping. So I think of it like this. Your toddler's brain is like a computer. When we update our computer with new drivers and new files and so on and so forth, have you ever noticed that your computer takes that little bit longer to shut down? It's got to update and do all of these things that it can do before it shuts down. And it's like our toddler's brain is very, very similar. It's very similar in that it's extremely active and it takes time to shut down and help our little ones to fall asleep. And our little ones need our help to do that. So if you can think about your little one's brain like a little computer and know and understand that when they're learning and developing something new, it can sometimes make sleep a little bit more challenging to come by. But the best way to help them to support them with that is to help them to feel calm and relaxed. Remember, it's very, very difficult to sleep in a state of stress. So as your little one grows and develops, they're going to experience, and as your little one grows and develops, and they further their physical, emotional, and social development, their knowledge and understanding of the world around them is going to trigger strange feelings, meltdowns, and difficulty managing their emotions. That's what we discussed before. On top of that, your toddler's brain is taking in all of this information and processing it. Your toddler's brain is extremely active and And I like to describe our toddlers as little scientists. Their brains are twice as active as that of the adult brain, and they have already formed 1,000 trillion connections, and that's twice as many as that as an adult. Your little one's brain is making all these connections, but while they're sleeping as well, what's happening is that the brain is going through a process called synaptic pruning. And what that means is that as your little one learns and grows and develops, their brain is going to create all these connections and neural pathways around all of the things that they're learning and developing. But when they're sleeping, synaptic pruning happens the brain and take away and get rid of those synapses and those connections that they don't need and they're not using. So this is why it's really, really important for you to be repetitive and consistent with your toddlers, because they're little scientists. They're creating little experiments in their heads and their minds, and they're thinking, if I do this, what is the outcome? And with toddlers, they're testing and testing and testing because they want to see what the outcome is. So in a world, they're basically looking at the world every day, and they're seeing the same things, but the same things that they're seeing every day take on more meaning. Their knowledge and understanding of the world around them grows and develops from day to day and from moment to moment. So I want to use the tree brain as an example and a way of just explaining to you how your little one's brain works in the simplest way possible. So we have the reptilian brain, which is the brainstem and the cerebellum. We have the limbic or the mammalian brain, and these two sections are both developed from birth. So they control bodily functions and processes. And the limbic brain is in control of the amygdala and the hippocampus, which controls our emotions, our thoughts, and our feelings. And those two parts of the brain are fully formed and developed when our little ones are born. Now, the thinking brain, the neocortex, that's the part of the brain that's in control of rational thinking and critical thought, voluntary movement. It's also the home of impulse control and the understanding of the consequences of choice. Now, our little ones, our toddlers, that part of their brain is still very much growing and developing. It's very, very much underdeveloped, but will start to develop and grow very, very quickly at around the age of 4 years of age. Now, it's because of this immaturity of the thinking brain, while sleep hygiene and bedtime routine is so important. So if you remember what I said in the previous slide where we were talking about brain synapses and connections, basically as our brain gets used to certain things, it creates a synapse. So say, for example, if you're in the habit of brushing your teeth in the evening, your brain has got a synapse for that. And every time you go to brush your teeth of an evening, you walk down that neural pathway, and that synapse becomes very well used. Now, as I mentioned before, with our toddlers, they are creating and building synapses and neural pathways all the time. But if they create a neural pathway or a synapse that they don't use, the brain will synaptically prune it, basically meaning you created a pathway that you're not using, so I'm going to get rid of it. The only way you can stop your little one's brain from getting rid of that synapse is to get into the habit of using it regularly. And again, if you've created your bedtime routine with your little one's brain has created a neural pathway which understands, this is my bedtime routine, this is what I'm going to do. The more you walk along that neural pathway, the more defined that footpath becomes, so to speak. So if you think about it like a footpath, when you've got a footpath that's walked along very, very regularly and consistently, you'll find that no grass grows on it. It becomes very easy to see where the path is going. It's a very clear and distinct path. If there's a path that isn't used very often, grass will grow over it. It doesn't become very easy to understand where that path leads to. And this is what happens with our neural pathways in the brain. If you don't use a neural pathway very often, it becomes very foggy, and then eventually it stops getting used. But if you are regularly and consistently using a neural pathway, if you're regularly and consistently doing your bedtime routine, that neural pathway in the brain will get walked along so much that it will eventually become a habit. It becomes something that your little one does without sleeping, which means that when you're in the habit of using your bedtime routine and putting all these wonderful things in place with good sleep hygiene to help your little one to become an amazing sleeper, falling asleep and being calm and getting into a relaxed state becomes a habit. It becomes something that becomes very easy for your little one to do. And then falling asleep becomes a lot easier. It's also important as well that you know and understand that when it comes to our toddlers, they do not have a concept of time. They do not understand what 1 o'clock in the afternoon means. They do not understand what 3 o'clock in the afternoon means. They have no concept of time. So their way of learning about the world around them and understanding what's going to happen now and what's going to happen next is by putting in place that routine. So when you start doing your routine regularly, it helps your little one to know and understand, okay, sleep is coming. It helps your little one to predict what's happening now and what's happening next. So it's very, very important to get very repetitive and consistent with your bedtime routines and the things that you do in the run up to bedtime. But it's also important to have your boundaries in place. A lot of parents think and feel that, because they know and understand that their little ones can get quite anxious or worried at bedtime, or worry about being separated from them, but they think, oh, or maybe I should, be a little bit more lenient, or maybe I should allow them to come into bed with you. The boundaries that you put in place are completely up to you. But what I will say is that remember that your little one is testing your boundaries. If every time they test a boundary, they get a different outcome, they're going to keep testing that boundary, and the same applies at night. So, for example, if your little one is waking up regularly in the night, and there are some nights when you say, you can get into bed with me, that's fine. But there are some nights when you're like, no, you have to stay in bed and stay in your own bed. Can you see why that would be confusing for your little one? If you're in the habit of saying to your little one, if you need me, I will come. And after the third time of me coming to you, then you can get into bed with me, and you are regularly and consistently sticking to that, your toddler is much more likely to go along with it because they know the outcome. They know the outcome is going to be the same no matter how much they test the theory. And so this is why it's important to have boundaries in place, and the boundaries that you put in place are completely up to you, but also to be repetitive and consistent with them. Because if you keep moving the goalposts, your toddler is not going to know what's going to happen, and they're going to keep testing your theories and testing your boundaries. It will often feel like they're manipulating you. Like, many experts will say, your little one is manipulating you at night. It's not true. They are testing the theory and the boundary, because every time they do, they get a different outcome. If, however, they test the boundary or the theory and they keep getting the same outcome, they're going to stop testing it because they know the same thing happens. So this is why it's really important throughout the night as well, once you've done your bedtime routine, to decide on a strategy to help your little one to stay in bed. Which one you do is completely up to you, but once you've decided on one, it's very important to stick with it and to be repetitive and consistent. Your toddler needs to know and to be able to predict what's going to happen now and what's going to happen next. If they can't predict what's going to happen next, can you see why that might feel a little bit worrying and fearful for them? Can you see why they're going to do things that make that to keep you close? So they're going to say, stay with me till I fall asleep. I don't know what's going to happen. This is why it's really, really important to be repetitive and consistent. And then lastly, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm whizzing through this quickly. Lastly, I just want you to be mindful of external and environmental sleep difficulty triggers. So if you remember, we were talking about the sleep resistance triggers prior to this: physical, emotional, social, and cognitive. These are all things to do with your little one, whereas external and environmental sleep resistance difficulty triggers are going to be the things that are going on around your toddler. So it's very mindful and that you understand that the toddler years are going to be a period of rapid change, not just developmentally, but externally too. This is often a time when families are moving house. It's a time when siblings arrive. It's often a time when mum can head back to work after maternity leave. It might be a time when a toddler is attending daycare or a childminder. And these changes can be stressful for any person, not just for a toddler. So it's really, really important that you help and prepare your toddler for upcoming changes. And again, this is something that we don't often do with our toddlers. We just kind of expect them to just go with the flow. But there is no reason why you can't prepare your little ones for the arrival of a sibling or for moving house. If you know you're moving house, there is no reason why you can't explain to your little one what's happening. Explain to them what's going on. We're going to be moving here. We're not going to live here anymore. Pardon me, this is going to be in your bedroom. Or if there's a sibling arriving, if mum's having a baby, you might read storybooks to them about what happens when a baby arrives and what's going to happen with mummy when she goes into hospital. You can always prepare and help your toddler prepare for things by letting them know things in advance. Even though our toddlers' verbal skills might be minimal to none, you might have a non-verbal toddler, or you might have a toddler that's only able to communicate a few words, their level of comprehension is really good. They are really good at understanding things. So please don't feel like you can't prepare your little one for something in advance. Prepare your little ones as far in advance as you can for any changes that are going to happen. And you'll often find that they surprise you with how well they cope with changes. So allow yourself and your toddler time to adjust to any new changes that might be coming up and help prepare them for it. Because again, this is what's going to preserve your sleep. So these are, I was going to go through the sleep strategies, but I'm not going to go through them because they're actually quite self-explanatory. What I might do instead is, because I'm mindful of the fact that we've only got 20 minutes left, is to turn my video on, to turn my light on, and to start answering questions on sleep for you. Would you agree, Ariana?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, first of all, Charmaine, thank you so much. I mean, there was just so much content to get through, and especially because you're not feeling well. So, guys, thank you for sticking with this. I appreciate it's a lot to digest, but it is being recorded, so you will get to kind of watch it back. I think what might be quite helpful, I know, Charmaine, you've kind of gone through all of the presentation, you know, and we still got 20 minutes. I know that the second part is around these kind of toddler sleep strategies. As you said, they are really self-explanatory, and all of these strategies, I think there's about 5 of them, will be sent to you guys as a handout afterwards, so you can read them in your own time. Charmaine, it might be worth maybe just going through one of them, just so that everyone can kind of, is that all right? And then we can move on to questions.
Yeah, sure. Right, the first one that I'm going to share with you is called Pop-Outs, and this one is a really good one if you've got little ones who are going through phases where they're all of a sudden saying, like, Mummy, I want you to stay with me till I fall asleep. I know a lot of parents are reluctant to do that because they're worried that by staying with the little ones until they fall asleep, they're creating a crutch or a bad habit. And so sometimes using this option as a way of helping them get to sleep, and then another way of helping them to settle to sleep if they wake up during the night, is a really good way of helping your little one to feel secure. So this works really well because it helps your child to feel secure. There are minimal tears, if any at all. And I find this method is really good for 2 to 6-year-olds who need their parent to stay present with them to fall asleep, which is something that often impacts toddlers around about the time when separation anxiety is coming into effect. So again, as I mentioned, separation anxiety is something that can impact toddlers around about 12 months of age, 18 months to 2.5. I'd say it kind of rears its head every 4 to 6 months of age, but it varies from child to child. So this is really useful if this is something that your child is experiencing. These strategies are something that require patience, and if you're doing them repetitively, consistently, you'll often find that after 1 or 2 weeks, you can probably move away from using them at all because your child has built up the level of confidence. So with Pop-Outs, this is basically what you're doing. So you'll do your bedtime routine as normal. So that might be bath, massage, bed. You'll do your bedtime routine to help your little one to wind down and be ready for sleep. And then when you're at the point that they're ready for sleep, you'll actually say to them, okay, right, now it's time for you to go to sleep. I'm just going to quickly go to the toilet, or I'm going to pop out and turn off the washing machine. Basically, you're just going to give your little one an excuse as to why you're going to pop out of the room for just a second and come back. So you might say to them, I'm just going to pop to the toilet and I'll be right back. So you pop out for a few seconds and then you come back and then you quietly return to the child without saying anything. And then after 5 minutes, again, you know, of you sitting with your child while they're sort of nodding off and getting ready to fall asleep, you might then make an excuse like, I'm just popping to the toilet, or I'm just, can you hear me? Sorry. I'm just popping to the toilet. I'll be right back. And the idea behind doing this is that when you get into the habit of doing it regularly and you build it up over a few days, you're gradually building up your child's confidence at being on their own in their room. And eventually the child will fall asleep whilst you're out of the room. Does that make sense? So the reason why this works quite well is because this strategy works well at building up your little one's confidence in you always returning. So as I said, when you've got a little one who is struggling with separation anxiety and they're worried about you going away and coming back, because you are always going away and coming back and you're literally gone for just a second, it builds your little one's confidence. And that's what we want to do. We want to help them to feel confident to stay in their bed by themselves until they fall asleep. So the intention is not so much for the child to have to fall asleep while, the intention here is not to have your child fall asleep whilst you're out of the room, but it's so that your child feels confident in you always returning to them, so they're not worried about whether or not you return in time for them to fall asleep or not. They feel so confident in you always returning that they just relax and fall into sleep is the idea behind the Pop-Outs. And it might not work if you move on too quickly. So if you're trying to move through this too quickly, so say, for example, on the first night, you pop out maybe too many times to your little one, it can actually have the opposite effect and be maybe a little bit too stimulating. So work slowly. So on the first night, you might only pop out twice. On the second night, you might only pop out twice, but the intervals between the pop-outs get shorter. So again, move at your child's pace and know and understand this is about building your child's confidence. If your child cries or gets upset, then it might be worth trying something else, because this is designed to build confidence and not put the confidence to the test. Another option that you could try if your little one is finding it difficult to fall asleep on their own, or wants you to stay with them when they're falling asleep, is trying a technique called first minute alone. The first minute alone is very, very similar to pop-out, but as you can imagine, it works on the premise that the child spends the first minute in their bed by themselves, and then you come in and stay with them for the duration of the time that it takes them to fall asleep. So this one, again, is really good for children who are verbal, because you can explain to them, like, this is what we're going to be doing, this is what's going to happen, this is what I'm going to do when you need me. Again, it's a really great way of building confidence and independence gently in our toddlers, because this is the thing with toddlers. Toddlers want to be independent, but when their emotions come into play, that's when they decide, no, I don't want to be independent anymore. So by doing this kind of activity with them, you can gently increase their independence and their confidence gently. And, you know, especially if they're always saying, you know, I do it, I want to do it. This could be your way of saying to them, this is how we're going to help you get good at going to sleep on your own, because you're going to spend the first minute by yourself, and then I'm going to come in and stay with you. And this one is really, really good for those who want to be independent but struggle with it. But again, it can be a lengthy process. So this is good for little ones who need lots of reassurance at bedtime. And please know and understand, if your little one needs a lot of reassurance at bedtime, it's not because you've done anything wrong. It's just that being separate from them, their primary caregiver, is something that can be quite frightening for little ones. And when you think about toddlers and, you know, their growth and their development, around about the toddler ages, when their imagination is really expanding and they can start thinking all kinds of crazy things, or worry about things that, you know, aren't at all a real concern, but to them it's very real. You know, with toddlers, they don't understand the difference between imagination and reality. To them, it's all real. So it's all about building up their confidence, helping to reassure them at bedtime, and reminding them, if you need me, I am here, but you can do it on your own first. And the method here is you do your bedtime routine as per usual, as normal. And if you couldn't tell before this class, I'm sure you can tell now, I'm a huge fan of the bedtime routine, because a lot of parents just don't understand how crucial and how useful it is to helping your little one to settle sleep. But you've got to do it every evening in the same order at the same time. So after you've done your bedtime routine, you quietly say to your little one, all right, you've done your bedtime routine, I'm just going to go and do something for a minute, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to stay with you till you fall asleep. And again, the beautiful thing about this is that your little one is going to be on their own for just a little amount of time, but they are comforted and secure in the fact that you're going to stay with them until they nod off completely, which can make many toddlers feel much more secure and relaxed. So if you remember, I said to you earlier on in the presentation that sleep doesn't happen in a state of stress. And if your little one is worried or anticipating you leaving them in the run-up to bedtime, that is going to increase those feelings of stress. Whereas using something like this, the first minute alone, is a great way of reassuring them and saying to them, you're going to be on your own for just a minute, but I'm staying with you until you fall asleep. So, as I said, you leave them on their own for that first minute, and then you return with them and stay with them until they fall asleep. And then the next night, you give them praise and encouragement for the previous night and say, tonight will be 2 minutes, and then leave for 2 minutes. And then return and stay with them until they fall asleep. So then, if your little one is okay, add a minute more for each subsequent night. Eventually, your little one will nod off without you whilst you're out of the room. So again, this is about building up their confidence at being in their room, in their bed, on their own without you. And the reason this works so well is that it's gently stretching your child's confidence at their pace. So if you're finding that 1 minute is too long for your little one, you might decide that 30 seconds is a great starting point, and that you want to increase the time that they spend by themselves at 30-second intervals. So, you know, you can adapt these strategies to work and to fit in around your family and your own unique child's confidence levels. You know, take it at a pace that suits you. But what I would say is if you try and take it at a pace too quickly for your child, it could backfire. So this is about gently stretching your child's confidence at their pace so that they feel confident enough to be able to fall asleep without needing you present. As I said before, it may not work because 1 minute is just too long for some children. So do scale it back to 30 minutes or 45 seconds and work at timely increments that works for you and your little one. Or if you don't even want to mention a time period for your little one, you could do that. That's another option as well. You could say, I'm going to be gone for just a few moments, and just literally be gone for 30 seconds. And then make those few moments last a little bit longer. So you might not even want to mention the scale of time for your little one. It's completely up to you how you adapt this one. So again, only increase the time every few days rather than every night if you have a particularly anxious child. And this is something that I've found with a lot of some of my clients, is that if they've got particularly anxious children, those children are worried about the increase in time, so we only increase the amount of time over a period of days rather than every single night. So again, work at your child's pace. Try not to rush your child, because sometimes if we try to push our child too quickly, it backfires and then everything ends up taking a little bit longer. And then I'm going to do the last one, the last strategy, kissing game, and then I'll feed over to Ariana. Is that okay, Ariana?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So this last one is called the kissing game, and this is another variation of the first two strategies. Again, this works well at helping the child feel secure. There's minimal tears, if any, and this is good for little ones aged 2 to 6 years of age who need their parents to be present to help them to fall asleep. Again, this one needs patience because it can be a lengthy process. Again, do your bedtime routine, settle your child drowsy but yet awake, and then kiss them goodnight. And then promise to return in a moment for another kiss, and then return straight away and give them another kiss. So as you can imagine, it's just lots of reassurance and security building for your little one by giving them lots of kisses and support. So take a few steps to the door and then go back and give them another kiss, and then promise to return in a moment for another kiss. So as you can see, this is just about you staying in the room and giving them that physical contact, so that as a reminder of, I'm still here supporting you. So do something in the room, hang out clothing, put toys away, whatever, and then come back and give them another kiss. So provided your little one stays in bed, you keep returning to give them a kiss. So this is a really good one if you've got a little one who likes to get out of the bed or likes to try and bargain with you. You can say to them, this is what we're going to do. You need to stay in bed. And if you stay in bed, I will turn and give you a kiss. If you get out of bed, you will not get a kiss and I will leave. So this is very much about you giving them what they need, but giving them what they need in a way that kind of suits the both of you, if that makes sense. So again, you can extend that by then going out of the room and doing something and then returning to the room again for a kiss. But the idea is that whatever you're doing, you'll keep returning to give them a kisses until they fall asleep. So should your little one get out of bed, you can say to them, get back to bed, and then you can have another kiss. And then once they go back to bed, you then do that. So you repeat this every time the child wakes up as well. So as you can imagine, this is quite a lengthy process, but this can be good for those who like to bargain with you or who like to kind of, use delay tactics. This works really well because, again, it builds the child's trust and confidence in you, always returning. And again, this is really good for those who kind of, like to get out of bed and want to bargain with you. So you can say to them, this is what you must do. These are the boundaries. You've got to stay in bed. And when you stay in bed, I will come in and I will do this and I will help you relax and fall asleep this way. So again, this is about building trust and the child's confidence in you always returning to help them relax. This is a good one as well because it keeps your child in their bed with you going to them while they're moving around. But this may not work because some children can find this too exciting and stimulating. So if you've got a child who finds this a little bit too excitable or it's amping them up, then it might be worthwhile trying a different tactic. But I find this one works really well for those who get anxious or for those who are constantly jumping out of bed. So this can be your way of saying to them, you stay in bed and I'll come to you. And this is about them building their confidence and their trust and relaxing so that they can relax and come and fall asleep. Because remember, it's all about helping to minimize that stress and keep them out of a state of stress so that sleep comes with ease. So Ariana, I don't know if you wanted to go to any questions because I'm not entirely sure. I think most of what I shared in this class answer the majority of questions, but if there are anybody who's got any specific questions that they want help with, I'm more than happy to help answer those questions while I can still talk.
Thanks, Charmaine. Please grab some water. Yeah, good. So the sleep strategies, Charmaine's taken you through 3 of them. There are 5 in total, as you can see from her slide. They're really, really straightforward. So you will get those, you get all 5 of those after. I think Fenny's will send it out tomorrow morning. There were a couple of questions that came through earlier in the chat from Nicola and Joanna about getting to sleep, but I actually think you've addressed those. But guys, if you want Charmaine to kind of go into anything a little bit further, please do say. One more recent question was around any advice for early risers, so i.e. 4:30 to 5 a.m. every day. Bedtime is 7:30 to 7:45, and he naps for a maximum of 1.5 hours.
Okay, in that scenario, the main things that I would try is I would usually suggest pushing bedtime back a little bit, but it sounds to me like his bedtime is already quite late. So in this instance, I would be more inclined to push bedtime back a tad bit. So I'd maybe make bedtime about 8:39 and to shave some time off of his daytime nap. So if he's doing 1 hour, 45-minute nap, I would take 45 minutes off that, play around with it and see what impact that has. There is no right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of tweaking around timings, because a lot of the time, what will work with one toddler may not work with another. But is this a little one that's going to nursery?
Yeah, yes, he is. Yeah.
It might be worth asking nursery to take some time off of his nap time for you. So if he's doing 1 hour 45 minutes, take off 45 minutes off that nap and see what impact that has on the night waking.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we've already reduced it from 2 hours, but as you and I just wanted some advice really, so I can go back and say take more off, because 4:30 is not the morning. and he's shattered. Way
too early.
He's shattered as well throughout the day.
See, sometimes with early waking, what happens is they wake early and then they have to nap early, and that nap that they constantly have reinforces the early waking. So what we might need to do is to slowly reduce that nap time and then get rid of it altogether. Yeah. So as the early morning gets later and later and later, shave off that time off of his nap, and eventually he might not need it at all. But at the moment, because he's waking super early, it sounds like he does need some nap time, because there's just no way he gets through a whole day by being up at 4:30, surely.
Thank you. Yeah, we can't leave the house in the morning because he falls asleep in the car or the buggy.
Actually, that's the annoying thing as well. They fall asleep in the buggy, and sometimes that little cat nap is enough to kind of keep them going. So if he does fall asleep in the buggy, how long does he fall asleep in the buggy for, may I ask?
Well, if he falls asleep in the buggy, say it's 10 o'clock, then I will let him sleep for kind of an hour and 15, but that's his nap. However long he sleeps for, then he will not get another nap.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good idea. But I would say how old are you two?
He'll be 2 in October.
Okay, so he's still quite young, so he will still need the nap. Yeah, I would say just keep the nap to 1 hour at the minute, and then as the early mornings get better and better, increase it. But what can be really tempting is to sometimes allow them to have a lie-in, which can often reinforce the night waking as well. So keep the nap time to a minimal, and sometimes pushing bedtime back just by 15 minutes, half an hour can sometimes make that early morning wake up a little bit later. But you won't know till you experiment. So write down what's happening, and when you experiment, write down what you're doing so that you can know what the outcome is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you so much. Really great advice. Thank you.
My absolute pleasure, my love.
Has anyone else got any questions? We're at 9, but feel free to unmute and ask away. No? Okay, well, thank you so much, guys, for joining. I really hope that, I know it was a lot of information to digest, but I really hope that you've kind of learned some strategies and tools and techniques that you can kind of go away and put into practice. The handout that you'll get sent also has Charmaine's details as well as Pachamama's. So if you have any follow-up questions or anything from Charmaine, please do get in touch. Charmaine, thank you so much for delivering this, especially when you're under the weather. You're such a trooper. So yes, thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. I hope I didn't sound too crazy with the golf balls in my throat. But as I said before, if you do have any questions, the information on how to get in touch with me or Ariana is in the handout. Do feel free to get in touch with me to say, I was on the toddler sleep, I just have one more question. I'm more than happy to help you and support you with that if that's something you're struggling with. But thank you so much for allowing me to share my pearls of wisdom with you all.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.
All right, take care, guys.